I'll take the
How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing all right, Julian. How are you?
Yeah, you haven't aged a bit. You look the exact same.
Well, it's nice of you to say, but you've always kind of been somebody that was able to bend the truth to meet whatever situation you were in.
Uh, I like to
So
I like to think of it as I look on the bright side of things.
there you go.
Yeah,
It's always half full with you.
yeah. Of all the
How long
coaches
you
I've
been,
talked
how
to,
long
you
you been
definitely.
doing this? How long you
What's
been
that?
doing this? How long?
Oh, so during about a year ago, Keith Leonard and Keith played at Annandale a couple years before me. He was class of '82, and then went to UVA. Another UVA guy named Preston Green, about my year, played at Fort Hunt, and then Kerry later on Jackie Funk, who you had so many one-liners with, and then another Kerry Kachonis and a few others. We just started a Facebook group of Northern Virginia basketball players, primarily in the Northern region, and it was great. Talking about all the players, the great games, coaches, and then I was talking. I was looking at Coach Jim Lewis's background, and he had done so much. He was the first Black player to play in the integrated leagues in Northern Virginia. He integrated West Virginia University, the first Black class of players, and then he was the first Black assistant coach for Duke. And I'm like, I had to interview this guy. This is fascinating. So I did Coach Lewis, and then he was coaching South Lakes when you were at Robinson.
Sure.
And then Coach Robinson worked for him over at George Mason as well. And then I started doing some other ones. Coach Jenkins, Tommy Amaker, Grant Hill. I will say, out of all the coaches, you have the most hair of all the coaches that I've talked to. So you win that award.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's good.
Yeah.
I got to win something because it certainly has taken you a little while to get to me.
That's not fair, because I texted emailed Matt a long time ago, and I couldn't get a hold of you guys. So
Really?
yeah.
Well,
A lot of
actually,
people.
I was put up to that by a friend of yours and mine,
Oh,
where I'm living right now, and my wife Annette and I are living at the Benini's house.
is that right?
Because we sold our house in Northern Virginia. We're moving to Richmond. Actually, we're moving to Goochland County.
Yeah.
And so we're staying at the Benini's because they are gone most of the summer. So we're really house sitting. So that's where we are. And he said, why don't you mention the fact that it's taken a little while to get to you? And I said, well, okay, let me see if I can put that into the whole topic.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Andrew Benini is a legend. I think he was once rated one of the top 25 high school players in the history of New York City. And everyone. I have a good.
That's what he told you.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing he said when I met him. But
he often leads with that.
Yeah, but his basketball. Anyone who ever played pickup basketball at UVA will never forget him, because his game is so unique. He's a great player too.
Yeah, he was a very good player.
Yeah,
and he suffered an Achilles heel. He tore his Achilles heel.
okay.
So he is currently on. He's trying to get back, but it just happened about a month ago. So he's got some rehab to do, but he's bound and determined to come back and play again. So
Yeah,
that's what he wants to do.
I mean, look, basketball is not a game for the over 40s, and I have a lot of friends that play as well, but there are better ways to stay healthy than play basketball.
Well, he seems to really enjoy it, So and good for him. More power to him.
Yeah.
I'll sit in the stands and I'll clap and say, "Yay!"
Exactly. Yeah, he's a great guy. Well, before we get to Andrew and your UVA days, let's go back and talk about growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania. You were from Erie, Pennsylvania. Is that right, Coach?
Well, I went to high school in Erie, Pennsylvania. I actually grew up in a very small town called Greenville, Pennsylvania, which is halfway between Pittsburgh and Erie on the western part of Pennsylvania. It was a small town. It was a great town to grow up in. They had all kinds of things for kids, and it was a kids' town. And I did all the sports. I played baseball in the summer. I swam in the summer. I played basketball in the winter and football in the fall. And it was just a great place to grow up. When my father's job changed, and we moved to Erie my 8th grade year, and so I don't even remember 8th grade. It was like I can't tell you what I did that whole year.
Yeah.
But ninth grade through 12th grade, I went to McDowell High School and graduated from McDowell in 70.
Were you already a seasoned basketball player when you got to Erie? I mean, did you?
No, no. I don't know that I've ever been a seasoned basketball player. But, it just it was a game that really grew on me. I played golf a lot when I was growing up. Baseball was really important to me. But when we moved, the baseball sort of fell off to the side and I started playing more golf. And then I started playing more basketball, and football was there. And the thing about football was our high school football coach, as good as he was, we had really excellent football teams at McDowell. And but they just used to beat us to death. I mean, we hit every single day. And it was just a painful experience,
Yeah.
And so as good as we were, every senior in my class got a scholarship to play football. Every senior that played on that team.
Wow.
I didn't want to play. I had had enough, so I had gotten better and better at basketball during the course of my high school career. And I went to camp at Camp Gettysburg between my junior and senior year. Coach Gibson was the head coach at the University of Virginia. And I had 2 great weeks of camp. And at the end of the 2 weeks, he offered me a scholarship to come and play at the University of Virginia. There was not another scholarship offer anywhere on the table.
Is that
I could
right?
have gone to any of the teachers' colleges throughout the course of Pennsylvania, throughout the state of Pennsylvania. They had a wonderful conference with Edinburgh and Lock Haven and Clarion. And, there was some great basketball being played there. But when I came down to Charlottesville and saw the U-Haul Arena and learned a little bit about ACC basketball, and that was what I dreamed of doing. So that's what I did.
So northern Pennsylvania there, northwest Pennsylvania there, it's football country, I would imagine.
Football and wrestling.
Football, wrestling. Because Clarion and all those colleges you mentioned, those are all wrestling schools too, I think. But who was your competition like in high school? Did you play against the teams from Pittsburgh? Because I know they had some great teams there.
We did play. My senior year, we played against Shenley High School. They had Jeep Kelly and Clarence. Who was a big guy? Damn, Maurice
Lucas.
Maurice Lucas. Yeah, he was a senior that year, I believe. I think we're pretty close to the same age. And they were really good. And they came into our place actually to play. And it was the second game of the year. And we were excited to play somebody different. Erie had decent competition, but it wasn't like some of the schools that were out of Pittsburgh and other places in the state. And so I guess about halfway through the first quarter, the score was tied. We were at the foul line, and I hear Maurice say over to, I think it was Clarence Hobson or something. They were 6'7" and 6'8", and Maurice was huge. He says, "Hey, we better start playing. These guys are serious." And then they got serious.
Yeah. That was it.
So, they beat us, but it was, we played hard. We did a pretty decent job. But that's the only game that I can remember that we really were out of the area that we were living in.
Right. So the competition was decent up there. I mean, you got a chance to play against some decent players.
Yeah, I think so. I can't name any of them. Honestly, I don't know. Dennis Satisher was a guard that went to Duke. He was a multi-sport athlete as well. He came out of Erie East, and I think he actually became one of the head professionals at Congressional Country Club. He was an excellent golfer too. We used to play golf together in high school. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, and I used to love watching their team play because he would run the team, and they were down. I remember one game they used to play at Gannon College at the time when there was a big city game, and I would go there to watch them play. They were playing Cathedral Prep, which was our big rival, and they were down 24 entering the fourth quarter, and they came all the way back and won that game. I could not believe that they came from 24 points back in the fourth quarter, but Satisher Dennis was the key to that whole thing.
Hmm.
And so I admired him and the way that he played. Other than that, I don't know.
Hmm.
The team that I left the year after I graduated and went to college, the guys that were left, there were 4 out of the 5 starters left. They almost won the state championship. They lost in the finals. All they
What
had
does
to
that
do was get rid of me.
They made some great off-season transactions.
Yeah. They made a couple good trades.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Coach, who was your high school coach in Erie?
Up until my senior year, it was the offensive line coach of our football team.
Is that right?
Yeah, the basketball program was pretty much a conditioning program for the football team.
Wow.
And my senior year, we had a coach come in named Paul Siegel, who was a basketball coach.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fantastic. What a difference it made. And I'm glad I made the decision I made. I had a great time at UVA. I saw some wonderful basketball.
Yeah.
And met Annette there, and I mean, just so many good things happened. So I'm just very grateful to have that opportunity.
Before we get to UVA, so what did you learn from Coach Siegel that you implemented? I mean, my recollection as you as a coach is you were very organized. You ran the practices in segments and nothing got too stale. And you tried to change things up every day. We didn't do the same things every day. So your practices were very lively, and we liked the practices. And then it was never drudgery. You made us run, but it wasn't outrageous. But what did you learn from Coach Siegel that you used as a coach?
Probably that I can't say that I learned a lot of X's and O's. I just learned that there was a different way to coach basketball than what I was used to.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Coach Siegel coached was much more enjoyable than the way that I had been taught previously. I mean, the coaches that I played for prior to Coach Siegel literally wanted me to hate them. I mean, I can't explain that, but it was just a different breed of coach.
We hated you too, Coach. So that was okay.
I can't say that was my goal, but I just couldn't, and I couldn't understand that. I really couldn't understand that. And so I was really glad when Coach Siegel came in, and he actually organized us in practices that made sense to me. We worked on the things that we were going to do in a game, and we didn't really waste any time. There was no just shooting around and hanging out and eating cookies and donuts during Saturday practices. Everything was timed. And so I got used to that. At Virginia, I tell you, the person I learned probably more than anything was Terry Holland. And I didn't play for Terry. Mm-hmm. I played for Bill Gibson. And, when we changed things a little bit during my career there. We opened the floor up a lot because Barry Parkhill was our point guard. He was an All-American. And we had some success with Barry in the middle of the floor, controlling the ball, and then everybody else kind of pitching in and him either taking the shot or passing off if people were open. Then we started up the defensive pressure a little bit, and that sort of helped me. My sophomore year, we actually got this ranked 6th in the country. Mm-hmm. We were 18-0, I believe. And Carolina was coming into Charlottesville to play us, and they were undefeated as well. And they had McAdoo and Walter Davis and all their guys.
Yeah.
And they came in and whipped our tail.
George Carl, and Bobby Jones.
I think they did have those guys. And I used to watch George Carl. And honestly, Julian, I had never seen basketball like they played. They pressed George Carl every time that they scored, which happened to be quite often. He would run back to half court and he would put up a hand signal. Most of the time it was a fist or his hands would be out. Of course, it took me about a year to figure out he was calling defenses, but that's just me. And I thought he was showboating. I thought, yeah, what a jerk. He was just calling defenses, and they'd trap here and they'd trap there. And it was just basketball like I'd never seen. They had Bill Chamberlain, Dennis Wysick, McAdoo when he came in. I never seen anybody like him. I mean, he a couple times I was sitting on the bench and I looked down and he wasn't even in my line of sight. He was so deep in the corner, but all you saw, he had a real high arc on the basketball when he shot the ball, and it went up, kind of played around the rafters a little bit and came down, and he made shot after shot after shot. He was a great player. So I don't know. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot.
Yeah. So, okay. So you end up going to UVA.
Yep.
And then, so before we get to the rest of your sophomore year, the freshman year, you sit out.
Right.
What was that like? So you go to Charlottesville. It's a small southern town at the time. Women are just, I think you were probably the first class of women.
Yeah. And that was in that first class, there were about 850, maybe 900 women that came on as underclassmen, underclass persons, whatever. You know, of course, now there's more women on campus than there are men. So
yeah, thankfully,
changed, you know, yeah. Competition was pretty tough there,
especially when you're losing like you guys were. So,
being a freshman, you know, we had four scholarship players, and we had Steve Morris, who came from Edison High School up here, and Steve walked on and earned a scholarship. And he and I were co-captains our senior year. We roomed together pretty much the whole time. And, you know, playing freshman basketball was fine. Everybody did it. You know, I mean, you could not play the next year when Andrew and Gus Gerrard and Brian Tully came in, Spencer Graham, that was the last year of freshman basketball. So they had a freshman schedule. And then the next year when Wally Walker came in with Bob Sefcik, was when freshmen could play. And it's been that way ever since, you know, so
yeah,
it was a good thing. Yeah. But
was it competitive? The freshman league, was it competitive when you played other freshman teams?
Yeah, a lot of guys. I mean, you know, the team with McMillan and Elmore and those guys, they had to play freshman basketball too. It was the same for everybody. So it was ACC basketball to us. It just wasn't the main game. It was the JV game, you know.
And my guess, you coming from a small market, it probably was good for you to have that freshman experience instead of, you know, coming from Erie, Pennsylvania, kind of a small town. I mean, the guys from probably the cities probably were more used to playing that kind of competition on a daily basis, like during the summer times and stuff.
I would think so. I mean, I used to go into downtown Erie and play at the YMCA, but I don't remember any outdoor courts that we played. There were places to play. Never found any. And so when we got to UVA and we played in the Dell, that was a lot of fun. You know, I enjoyed it. And you know, of course, men's gym was always a great place to play in the off season as well. So,
well, you were a great outside player. When I met you, you were shooting outside and you were a great passer. What were you like coming from high school to UVA? Were you like a 2-3, or are you more of a 3-4 at the time?
Probably more of a 3-4. I played in the post in high school. Pretty much stayed within 15 feet of the basket most of the time. We didn't do anything fancy. It was pretty basic stuff. And when I got to Virginia, you know, my junior and senior years, our centers were Lanny Stahersky and Ed Shetlick. They were a little inconsistent, and sometimes I would start and Gus would start and Wally would start, and we'd have 3 forwards in the game, you know, along with 2 guards. Because I'm a forward, if I'm anything, a 3-4 man. You know, I could play guys a little bigger. I was physical, you know, and I had some ups then, you know, where now you know, they're pretty much I call them downs, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. They weren't up when I met you.
So yeah, I never you know, somebody that jumped out of the gym, but you know, I could get some things done, and I got to be a better shooter because I practiced it all the time. I mean, if I was going to be effective, I wasn't going to be effective inside because, guys like Tree Rollins and other people that were 7 feet, 7'2", Tom Burleson, I wasn't going in there to score. I had to learn to score from out in the perimeter. So
yeah, Tree Rollins was Clemson and Burleson was NC State, right? Yeah. So what was Charlottesville like in those days? I mean, I guess the corner was like the only kind of place you can buy a T-shirt. What was it like back then?
Pretty much. Well, I could probably tell you that when I go through Charlottesville now, oh my heavens. I mean, it's changed so much because there's been so much building between campus housing, academic buildings, restaurants, places for people to live that aren't actually associated with the university. I mean, it seems like every square inch of the city has got something on it. It wasn't really like that back then. But we didn't venture off campus very much either, to be honest. We'd walk around campus. We would go get a pizza at night, sometimes go to the corner to do that. We kept to ourselves. Many of us didn't join a fraternity or anything like that because we had a fraternity of basketball players at the time. And we pretty much stuck to ourselves and went to class like everybody else. And, but as far as getting out in the town, wasn't a whole lot of that.
Did you live on campus all 4 years?
No, we lived on campus as freshmen. Only freshmen there was only housing for freshmen.
Okay.
Upperclassmen had to live off campus. We lived at U Heights.
Okay. Yeah.
Along with all the other athletes.
Yeah.
So it was football, basketball, lacrosse, that we were all there at the same time.
And you walk to Kenny Johnson's for dinner, right?
We would go to Ken Johnson's. One year we actually decided we were tired of the cafeteria at Newcomb Hall.
Yeah.
So we asked Coach if we could take the scholarship money for meals and apply it to Ken Johnson's cafeteria. So he worked that out. So we would go to Ken Johnson's and we would have lunch and dinner, I think, each day. So that was a pretty good year, but eventually we would get back. We tried to cook ourselves one year. That did not work out.
Yes, the kid.
We would eat our stipend in about a week.
Exactly. Well, the Ken Johnson thing that was in existence even when I started at UVA, and then they built a meal hall just for the athletes. Sometime in the 7 years I was there. So, but anyways, let's get back to your sophomore year in basketball. You talked about UNC and Bob McAdoo, George Carl, Walter Davis. What was Dean Smith like back then? He was a young coach. He didn't have a big reputation yet. So did you know about Dean Smith, or were you impressed by him?
Yeah, we knew about Dean Smith. In fact, there were some very colorful coaches in the conference. There was Norm Sloan at NC State. They had a great team. David Thompson's the best player I think I've ever seen. They had Lefty at Maryland. The guy Tate's Lock was at Clemson.
That's right.
And I'll tell you this story. This is kind of an embarrassing story, but it's true. We played Clemson my senior year at home, and we were playing Davidson, and Terry Holland was coaching Davidson. So they came into Charlottesville, and we're playing them, and we're down one with about 58 seconds left, something like that. We have the ball. So we go out on the court and we run the clock out without taking a shot. Nobody ever shot the ball. And Tate's Lock called Coach Gibson that night and said, what I understand is if the referees hadn't turned the lights out, you guys would still be in there passing the ball around.
Oh, man. Were you on the floor? Were you on the floor?
I was on the floor. I have to say that, but Barry, that was my junior year. Barry was a senior. Barry was on the bench. He had fouled out. Wally Walker was on the bench. He had fouled out. Nobody knew he was supposed to shoot. Nobody told us. So nobody did.
Yeah.
So, I'll take the blame for that because I was a co-captain and I had I had my hands on that ball a few times during that 48 seconds and never once considered shooting it.
Yeah.
So we lost. And the next year, Terry Holland came into Charlottesville as the new head coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys got Terry Holland a raise. So that was you guys.
That was it.
Yeah. So the first year, your sophomore year again, you guys beat that Maryland team, a huge upset with Tom McMillan. Was Lynn Elmore, Jim O'Brien who played here at Stewart.
Right.
What was that game like? That was down at U-Haul, right?
Oh, it was exciting because they were a big name, and of course they were. And Lefty was broadcasting the UCLA, the East stuff, and blah blah blah. And they came into Charlottesville. It was early in the season, maybe the 4th or 5th game, and we really did play extremely well, and beat them by like 20, I think. I mean, it was a decisive win, and the whole place just went crazy. You know, watching up until Barry came here, attendance at UVA games was very minimal. You could get a seat anytime. It wasn't hard to get a ticket. It was just a much different atmosphere than it is today. When I was a freshman, they played South Carolina, and South Carolina had John Roach and that crew that was written up in Sports Illustrated, and so they were a national team. And Barry hit a jump shot on the baseline at the buzzer to beat them, and the place went bananas, and they packed it every game after that. You know, so coming into the season when I became a sophomore, we expected big crowds, and it was packed that night. I mean, there was standing room only. People were standing everywhere, and you know, we just played really, really well. And we, in fact, we started off that whole year. We won 18 in a row.
Wow.
Ranked 6th in the country. Now we used to go back to the dorms and look at each other and say, they got us at 6th in the country. That can't be true, you know, because we didn't feel like we were any different than we'd ever been, you know, but people were contributing, you know. I mean, our first 5 were 4 seniors and Barry, who was a junior. I would come off the bench. A couple of the guards would come off the bench. Al Drummond was my class. He would play, and everybody seemed to be able to contribute here and there. And, you know, we just had a really good year. You know,
so Coach Jim O'Brien, a lot of people think he's one of the best players to ever play in the northern region. I've heard a lot. I didn't know anything about him until we started this group. What was he like? You might not have saw him that much because I guess he was probably a couple years ahead of you.
I don't remember. The only thing I remember about him is that he drew a lot of attention from opposing fans because his nickname was Bozo. Hey, and the places would just be, I mean, it was so loud, Bozo, and he just took it, you know, he just took it. In fact, I think it made him, it just brought out something in him that maybe he wouldn't have had otherwise, because he would shut people up by the end of most games. He could play.
Yeah. What made Barry Parkhill so special? Now, I think Barry Parkhill became the coach at Penn State later on. Is that correct, or is that his brother?
His brother Bruce came to Charlottesville when Barry was a junior, and he took the grad program in education. And let's see, he became a grad assistant and helped out on UVA staff for a year or so, and then he was asked to go to William and Mary by the guy who was the coach there then. And I honestly can't remember what his name was. But within a year after Bruce left to go to be the assistant coach, that guy left William and Mary, and Bruce became the head coach at William and Mary. So within a 2-year period, he was a soccer player at Lock Haven State, came to Charlottesville to get his master's, got his master's, and within a year he was head coach at William and Mary in basketball.
Wow.
And had a really good career. Was at William and Mary for several years, then he went to Penn State, and he was the head coach at Penn State. Barry went to be an assistant coach with Bruce at some point in there. I don't think he went with him to Penn State. I'm not positive about that. Barry went up to New England and became a head coach at a small school up there for a while. And then he came back to Charlottesville, and now he works in the Virginia Athletic Foundation, who, by the way, wants to talk to you about raising your donation every year.
That wouldn't be very hard, but actually I got kids getting ready to apply, so I guess I better take that call.
Always helpful.
Yeah, exactly. But as a player, Barry was a great shooter. What kind of player was he?
Tough, just tough. I mean, it didn't matter what the environment was. We'd go to the Dell in the spring and just play pickup games. He wanted to win, and he did everything he could to win. He'd play defense, he'd make shots. He was a great passer. He could see things that other people didn't see, and he had a total game. He was really good.
Yeah. So, okay, after your sophomore year, your statistics, and I hate to give you too many compliments because you never were very complimentary of me, but your statistics are very good.
That's not true. I always tell people what a great person you are.
except for when I exaggerate and I lie a lot, but you shot a very high percentage from the floor. You end up your senior year, you're just below double figures at 10. So your game, I think you're the third leading scorer your senior year behind Wally, Walker, and Gus. So your game really developed as a player.
I mean, I guess so. I just wanted to be ready when I was called upon to play. And I can't say this. My senior year went as I had hoped it would. We didn't win as many games as I really thought we should. We just had a difficult time piecing it all together, but I could play defense, and I could get out on the break, I could run, and my shooting had improved. So, my parents didn't get down here to see very many games, but they came to see me my freshman year prior to Christmas, and the game that they saw, I was 0 for 9 from the field. And I swore after that game, first of all, my parents never came back.
Exactly. And they weren't invited either.
They said, okay, we'll just stay away, you have fun. And I just swore that would never happen again, so I just worked at it, so that's what you got to do,
What was it like going on Tobacco Road, going to those places on road trips? That must have been a lot of fun back then.
It was a lot of fun. We used to travel the day before. So we would travel down. We would usually practice in the arena that we were going to play in the next day. And then we'd go back to the hotel. We'd have dinner as a team and hang around and then go to bed. It was kind of boring, so we didn't have tutors with us. We'd bring books if we had to do some work, but people did not travel with us. We didn't fly anywhere but Clemson. We flew to Clemson, and but that was it. And so we were gone quite a bit. We'd get back late. You could get out of the game get out of the locker room and on the bus by 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and it's a 3 to 4 hour drive by bus home from down there. And so it would be early in the morning when we'd get back, but most of us would, being young, you can get up and get to class and go to practice, and it doesn't really bother you, so it's fine.
Well, what kind of coach was Coach Gibson? What did you learn from him?
He was a very he believed in giving us a lot of free time. He did not monitor us very much at all. I mean, I compare today's kids in their experience with what we went through. And Barry and I talk about this all the time, because I just had lunch with Barry the other day, and we were talking about this very thing. There's very structured programs, at the same time, if they, want to be on a diet where they're gaining weight, they got a nutritionist that can show them how to do that. They got a nutritionist that can show them how to lose weight. They got people in the weight room that You want to increase this area of strength, this is what you do. And they monitor it all the time. And the same thing occurs on the basketball court. They have individual workouts, with coaches in the off season, where we never had any of that. Our coaches couldn't even be in the arena when we were playing pickup games. And, so it was just a different environment. And I would so much, if I improved as a player under the circumstances I was playing in, I would love to know just how much I would have improved had I been able to go through the things that kids today go through. I mean, it's just a remarkable. You watch these kids come into Charlottesville and you see them as a freshman and then you see them as a senior and the progress that they've made. And it's just, to me, it's just remarkable, and it's just, coaches are, the whole program is for the benefit of those kids, I mean, in every area of life, they can improve. So Coach Gibson didn't have that. He didn't have all those assets around him that could help him. So we were pretty much on our own. We go to class, we'd come to practice. We'd have free time in the evening to do things we wanted to do, whatever that was. Most of the time it was watch TV or go eat pizza.
Yeah. Well, how was he able to get Wally Walker and Gus Gerrard to come to UVA? I mean, two future pros, Gus mostly in the ABA, and Wally was I guess a Portland Trailblazer. But Wally, when I started understanding basketball, they won the ACC in '76. That was a huge upset, and it kind of put UVA on the map in terms of basketball. I mean, I know you guys had a good year your sophomore year, but that was a kind of a seminal moment.
It didn't end well.
Yeah, it didn't end well. So what kind of players were they? How did they end up at UVA in the first place?
Well, Coach Gibson had a pretty good Pennsylvania connection because he's from Pennsylvania, and he knew a lot of the coaches that were throughout the state. And he had a camp at Gettysburg, and a lot of those players and coaches matriculated there to work for his camp and to go to his camp. So he had a pipeline that he didn't have in some other states. Back in those days, New York, Pennsylvania, were probably the two areas of the country that Coach Gibson knew best. And so that's where most of our players came from. And so he worked hard on Wally because Wally was being recruited by a lot of people. Gus, Jim Hobgood, who was Barry's year, was from the same high school that Gus was from, Uniontown High School. I think that's the name of it. It's Uniontown is the town. I don't know if I think that's the name of the school. But Hobbo came, and so Hobbo would go back home and then talk about UVA. And so when Gus came to visit, he liked the school and he said, okay, I'll come. So it wasn't fluke, I mean, he had heard about Virginia. He knew about Virginia. He wanted to play in the ACC. And then same with Wally. Now, Wally was it was close with Wally. It was between us and Maryland and maybe a couple of other ACC schools. I didn't really get into the recruiting thing that much. All I heard was rumors, but when he decided to come to UVA, all I can tell you is people were very happy, when he made that decision. So
and they're very special. I mean, what kind of player? Do you know right away that these guys are very special? They're going to be future pros.
Yeah, they could do things. I mean, Gus had tremendous jumping ability. I mean, he was a really skinny guy, but his legs were really strong, and he could do a lot of different things. And Wally was just a solid player. Wasn't particularly quick, but he had really good footwork, and he could shoot the ball. And he was long, and he would get that ball up there. His senior year, when they won the ACC tournament, I've never seen a player who had an ACC tournament like he did. My wife and I happened to be there for that because that year I had my first year of coaching experience. I had coached at St. Anne's Belfield. A lot of people don't know this. I had been the head coach at St. Anne's Belfield, who had 9 guys. That's beside the point. We got through the season and they gave my wife and I ACC tournament tickets as a gift at the end of the year. And so we were at the tournament that they actually won it was in Landover. And what a thrilling experience that was. Wally was just awesome, but the whole team was awesome. You know, they beat State, Carolina, and I don't know, maybe Duke. I don't know, the 3 ranked teams in a row to win the ACC tournament. And yeah, it's just a great weekend. So
yeah. So, Coach, I believe after you graduated, you stayed an extra year as a post grad and played football. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah. I did. I switched my major. I had been in speech and communications. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with that. And so I switched to the education school. So I had another year of work to do. And so I wanted to see if I could extend my scholarship. So I went in to see Sonny Randall to see if he wanted to. I had played spring football 2 years, at least 1 year, I think maybe 2 years. I didn't play my senior year after we got done. So I had played at it, you know, and college practices were nothing at all like what I experienced in high school. I mean, I actually thought they were kind of a waste of time, you know, to be honest with you, because there wasn't very much teaching going on at the time. But that was spring ball, you know. I really didn't know any better. And then so when I went in to see Sonny Randall, and he, you know, I'm 6'5" and I'm, you know, 240 pounds and I can run. And he said, yeah, we got scholarships. We can let you stay for a year. And so I did, you know, and so I used the summer trying to get stronger, and went out to camp, the very first day of fall ball. We were not in pads. All right. And they had me on defense. They had me at defensive end, which quite frankly, I thought was a mistake, because I would have been a great tight end, but that's beside the point. I'm good. Just let me in here. Let me see what I can do. And somebody cracked down on me from outside, and they just put their forearm right on my kidney. And I remember getting dizzy, because it hurt for a second, but then it just sort of went away, and then I got dizzy. So I finished practice. And that night, when I was going to the bathroom, the toilet bowl filled with blood. And so I said, you know, I went in to see Joe Geek the next morning. He was our athletic trainer. I said, Joe, is it bad if you urinate in the morning and it's all blood? And he looked at me and said, you're damn right it is. We got to get you to the hospital. So Sonny Randall had a rule: you walk to the hospital. So I was in U-Haul and I walked to the University of Virginia Hospital. Jim Colleran was our tight end, returning all ACC tight end. He had sprained his ankle in practice the day before. He had to use crutches to get. They didn't take us. We both walked together.
It's crazy.
That was Sonny. He was a different kind of a guy. He was trying to instill discipline in the program, and he had some ideas of ways to do that. And some of them might have been okay. Others were a little weird, and that one was weird. But anyway, I was in the hospital for 11 days in a row. They wouldn't let me out until my blood was completely clear, or my urine was completely clear of blood. And it took that long for that to happen. So I missed all of 2 days pretty much. And that in football, if you're not there for that, you know, you got a lot of catching up to do. And I had a lot of catching up to do anyway, because I had not played. So it pretty much, I was on special teams and just tried to keep learning, and finished. Got my degree and was done.
Yeah. And so you went to St. Anne's Belfield afterwards? And
I had three job offers when I got done. One was assistant professional at Farmington Country Club, which I did not want to do. John Snyder was a big athletic booster at the time. He was the golf pro there. It was a very, Farmington is nice club, but I don't know. I just couldn't see myself doing that. And then I had Landon Burkhead asked me to sell equitable life insurance, or I could teach and coach. I applied at Albemarle County Schools, wanted to coach in Albemarle County, but Doug Terring was a lacrosse player at UVA. He became the athletic director at St. Anne's Belfield and asked me if I'd be interested in coaching the basketball team. I said, sure, yeah, like that. So that's what I did for a year. And then after that, I went, Rich Lyons, who you may remember Rich Lyons. Rich Lyons was coaching at Stewart. He came.
He was at Stewart. He was in Northern Virginia, Rich Lyons. I didn't know that.
Yes, he was here for a couple of years.
I didn't know that.
And then he became the head coach at Albemarle High School and contacted me to come and interview for his assistant position, which I did, and became his assistant at Albemarle, which took me out of St. Anne's Belfield. So that's how I got into public school coaching.
And you were teaching at Stab and also at Albemarle?
I was not teaching at Stab. I was teaching at Jack Jewett, which was built as a middle school, but at that time, Albemarle County only had one high school. And you know how big Albemarle County is. It's huge. And they were busting at the seams. So they made Jack Jewett, which is on the same property as the high school. They made that the 9th grade school. And then the high school itself became 10, 11, and 12. So that way they could fit the kids. So we had about 1,000 9th graders at Jack Jewett. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that because I could walk. We lived at Westgate Apartments. I could walk to work, walk home. It was just really a lot of fun. And we were getting wealthy. I think we signed a contract for $6,500 a year. So between the two of us, my wife and I were making almost 13 grand.
Exactly.
We were rolling in it.
It's good. Those are good times, especially during those were inflationary times in the late 70s too. So years later, Rich Lyons was our team camp coach at UVA. So we went down to UVA. You sent us down there between my junior and senior year. And that guy, he was really sharp. Great coach.
Very sharp.
So the team camp was loaded that year. We didn't have Joel Dempsey and Chris Warren. Football players were getting ready for football, so they didn't come. But Salem had Richard Morgan. Mullins in West Virginia had Herbie Brooks. They were the defending state champs of West Virginia. Woodbridge was good. They were going to win the Commonwealth District the next year. I'm forgetting someone else, and that was good. And we ended up getting to the final that we played really well, and Lyons was very sharp. We had a fun week.
Very good coach. We had a really good team that year too. I worked with the post players, and I love those guys. And we did a lot of the Carolina stuff. We did a high-low post. We started with interchanging the two. With down screen in the post, but then that got to be a little too complicated for one of them. So we just kept one of them in the low post and one of them at the high post. And from that point on, I'll tell you, we had really good guards. Greg Maynard, who is the head coach at Albemarle High School, was our point guard.
He still is?
I don't know. He may have retired. His brother Darren is at Western Albemarle.
Mm-hmm.
But Greg was our point guard. Reggie Stepp was our other guard.
Reggie Stepp. Yeah.
We had a slew of 3s and 4s that could play. So we were pretty good. But we did come up that year to Jefferson in a holiday tournament. We were undefeated, feeling pretty good. Jefferson comes out on the floor. Actually, I don't think it was a tournament. I think it was just a regular season game. It was right before Christmas.
That was Dick Wickline was coaching, right?
Correct. And they were just like a bunch of 6-foot white dudes. They cleaned our clock. I mean, just handed it to us. They beat us by 18 or 20. And our guys slunked up on the bus and, felt terrible, but it gave us a good reason to practice well over the holidays. And we were ready for January when it came around. So it actually turned out to be a good thing, although at the time, it didn't feel so good. But
that was probably Tim Danehauer. Jefferson's probably Tim Danehauer.
I don't remember any of the players other than the fact that they ran rings around us. It was embarrassing because we were pretty good.
Yeah, I used to play pickup with Reggie Stepp. kind of a cheap shot guy in some ways, but
Yeah.
I that name when you brought it up, it brought back some bad memories. So how'd you get the job at Western? So that probably happened pretty quickly.
It did. That year, the school was being built. They were finally building another high school in Albemarle County, and so I knew that. And the guy that I worked with at Jack Jewett, his name was Don DeMaria. He had been coaching the 9th grade basketball team for a number of years, and they used to beat everybody by a lot because he had all of his players. He had all of the 9th graders and they were all pretty, he could get 15 with no problem at all. And so here I come, and I'm working with Dom, and so that year when we both applied to be Rich's assistant, he chose me as the assistant with him, and he asked Dom to do the JV team. Dom didn't like that because he wanted to be a varsity assistant coach. But Rich said to Dom, "Look, Dom, Bob doesn't have any head coaching experience. He has. He was at St. Anne's Belfield for a year, but he only had 9 guys." He said, "I'd rather have him work with the post players with me, and you handle the JV team because they're going to get a better experience with you." And Don was convinced that was good, and it probably was smart thinking. So we went through the course of that year, and both of us applied for the job at Western Albemarle. I had one advantage, maybe more than one, but one big advantage that I had was I had Charlie Armstrong was the principal. He was named the principal of the new school, and I had his son in my 9th grade health class at Jewett that year. And I got to know him pretty well. And, so I think when Richard went home in the evenings and Charlie Armstrong would ask him about his PE teacher, he probably had positive things to say about me. I made sure that he did. So I'm not stupid, So, when we applied, I got the job. It's all I can say. Was Francis Dahl was the baseball coach and assistant football coach. I was
Francis Dahl. That was at Lake Braddock.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Mike Campbell was the athletic trainer. We all came up about the same time after 5 years at Western Albemarle. We all matriculated to Northern Virginia because I think I love the Valley. I love, we played some really good, and we played Ari Leofstan, Paul Hatchers, and he's in the Hall of Fame, Virginia Hall of Fame. He's won thousands of games. He had some great players. Harrisonburg with Ralph. God, what an experience that was. Roger Berge was just a great person. I liked Roger a great deal. And, all those kids, Waynesboro, Turner Ashby, Broadway. We would go over the mountain in the wintertime, and sometimes you could see the snow coming over the mountain. It was just a great environment.
It's beautiful.
And so I loved coaching there. I really did. But my wife, Annette, is from Northern Virginia. She graduated from Falls Church High School, and she came down to Virginia. So we would go up to Northern Virginia pretty often, see her parents, maybe go to a movie or something. And so the itch started to get to me about maybe moving up that way to be in a more competitive environment. And I was very well aware that, there were a number of high schools close to each other. They had great athletic programs. There's a lot of competition, a lot of good coaches. That's where I wanted to be. And so I just kind of waited until there was an opportunity to do that.
Well, so you guys went to state the year before you came to Robinson. I remember that. And then I think you did. And then Roscoe Dean stepped down. And did you feel like you had a good chance to get the Robinson job? Because I remember when they announced you got the job, I just finished JV. No one knew you up there.
Right.
Obviously, you played about 8 years earlier at UVA, but that was kind of before ACC's on TV every single night. So it's not like we knew a lot about you. Did you expect to get the job?
No, not really. I was hopeful. I didn't really know who would apply. I figured everybody in the world who wanted a job would apply, and so there were 2 jobs open that year. One was at Langley and one was at Robinson. So I applied to both. I just, and Dr. Manning was the principal at Langley, and that's where I got an interview first. And so I went and talked to Dr. Manning, and he was very, very positive and actually acted like he was going to give me the job. But I said, I'm also interviewing at Robinson. I'd like at least enough time to do that before I make a decision about anything. And he said, just let us know when that is going to be, and we'll move on. So I got an interview with Harry Smith at Robinson. And I'll never forget when I walked into the office, Harry was leaning back. I think it was in the afternoon. It was maybe after lunch, but he was leaning back in his chair and his feet were up on his desk. And he looked like he's about ready to go to sleep. And I walked in and I said, I'm looking for Harry Smith. And he jumped up. He said, that's me. I said, well, I'm Bob McKeag. I'm here for my interview. And honestly, we hit it off so well. And he walked me around, and at the end, I got the same feeling. I'm thinking, God, it sure feels like he wants me to come up here and work. So I asked him, I said, do you think I got a shot at this? And he looked at me and he said, yeah, I think you got a pretty damn good shot.
Yeah.
But he said, just be patient. He said, this process takes a long time in this county. And it was May already, and we got to move, and
Right.
More time went by. I mean, it was July before he could actually call me and say, we're offering you the job. And I'm sure that was an HR thing. It had nothing to do with the school or Harry. It had to do with the fact that HR wouldn't allow them to offer the job until, all the ducks were in a row. So that's how I came up here. I actually had called Rich Lyons and said, what's the deal here? I said, if I'm offered a job at Langley or at Robinson, which do you think is a better job? And he I'll never forget what he said. He said, if you want to win the district, go to Langley. If you want to win the region, go to Robinson. And I said, oh, okay. And so that pretty much sealed where I wanted to go. Because district championships are fine, nothing wrong with that. But from where I sat, the region was the big tournament. And
exactly
that's where I wanted to be.
Yeah. So you move up here, and it's amazing how much talent was in the district those years. I forgot exactly the numbers, 82, 83 your first year, but it was great. I remember our first game together, we played Michael Graham against Sherman Douglas, but we had 8 Division I players in the Northern District, my senior year, your second year. So we had Tommy Amaker, we had Jeff Bowling, my teammate, your player. We had there was George Bergen, there was Derek Hensley, Derek Turner, Woodson had another Division I player. I can't name them all.
Pat Whitting.
The district was, what's that?
Pat Whitting.
Pat was my junior year, but yeah, you're right. Another one. And Tommy Amaker, Tyrone Shaw. Yeah, Tyrone Shaw, James Clark, all Division I players. And coaches, you had Red Jenkins, you had Carl Hensley, you had Jim Warren. You're talking about Mike Henson, legendary coaches, all of them. So it must have been, kind of a daunting task. Not only is the team was 3-18. My sophomore year, I was on JV. It's not my fault. But you're coming into a district with all these legendary coaches. How did you feel about that? Were you confident you could do it, or?
Julian, coaches, okay? We all think that we're the next best thing coming, okay? And there was no doubt in my mind that I could change things the way they had been. In fact, I had been at basketball camp. I used to work Virginia's basketball camp all the time. And one year, the year before I came to Robinson, Bob Plybon came down and was working in Mem Gym with me. He was one of the staff members there. at the time. And he looked at me and he said, "You're never going to win there." I said, "How can that possibly be? There's 3,000 kids in the building." And he said, "They're not basketball players." I said, "Well," I can't believe that. And he said, "They're nice kids, great kids, but you just can't win there." So I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go anyway, because I was already committed. And, I wasn't sure how it was going to get done, but I firmly believed that we would find a way to make it happen. And so we just came in and went to work. And, we said from the very beginning, you probably remember this, we're going to win the region championship. At some point, we're going to win the region. That was the goal. And everything else was directed to that goal. And, 5 years, it took 5 years, but we made it happen. So.
Yeah. The first year, and I think the starting lineup was probably Kevin Leisure, Chris Harriman, Joel Dempsey. We were just turning it around, but we were 500 that year. I think actually we had a winning record that year, and we beat TC in the Garden. TC ended up getting second in state. They actually hit a half court shot after the buzzer. That could have been the winning shot, but we actually beat them in the buzzer your first year at the buzzer in the Garden the first year. Do you remember that game at all?
I don't.
Yeah.
Here's what I remember. I remember the record, and it was a game, either a game above or a game below 500. But we had, I don't know if you remember this, but Joel Dempsey, Brett Hopkins, and Kurt Collier were all three good friends, all football players.
Yeah.
And so we got back from somewhere, maybe it was TC, I don't know. I came to work the next morning and they had pitched a tent and they were sleeping on the concrete outside the doors of the gym. And I said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "We just want to be the first ones in the gym, coach." So I knew I was in the right place,
Yeah.
They weren't the greatest basketball players, but my God, were they really good kids, and they, that's the kind of tone that team had, you just would do anything you could to make us win. So
it was interesting because the real story of how that happened was we had gotten trounced by 15 and 20 points. I forgot who we played. It was Friday night, and you came to the locker room and you had this thing about you. You were trying to be mad, but you would say funny stuff while you were mad. And you said something like, "All right, tomorrow we're going to practice." And we didn't practice every Saturday, but you said, "Tomorrow we're going to practice. I want you guys in the gym at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to run you for 2 hours in the gym tomorrow. So I don't care what you guys do tonight, but you be in the gym and you're going to run." So those guys went and they did that. They slept right in front of the gym. And when you got there, you didn't even acknowledge them. So you saw them and you just walked right in, open the door, open the gym up, didn't even look at them, and we just started practicing. So that's what happened that day.
Did you run?
We ran the whole practice. You ran
Really?
us from the moment. Yes, from the moment we got there, you ran us the whole practice.
Well, I'm sure that made us a lot better basketball players.
Exactly.
What kind of coaching is that?
Yeah. So exactly. No, we deserved it. So we loved you. So we were 11-9 the first year. Maybe actually 12-9 the first year. Then my year, we were 500 my year. And then your first great team was the year after I graduate. They started falling in place.
We have in common.
You did. You brought up a great assistant coach, Will Robinson. That was a great move because of I've been around basketball for many years. I never met a better coach of guards than Will Robinson. And you just happened to, and Will had just won the state at Cumberland, single A school, about between Charlottesville and Richmond. And we had Jeff Bowling coming back. Jeff was going to end up being a starter at Air Force. He was going to be player of the year in the district that year. Chris Warren was, as soon as you move Chris Warren from a guard to the post, he ended up being a phenomenal post player, which we didn't even know because he was very, he as a guard, he was very average. But once you put him in the post, everything changed for him. And then you had this class, which was going to make your state run. you had these kids coming in. There was going to be Tommy Martin, Paul Bushman, Sean Johnson, Mike McDaniel, and then you had Kevin Dennis and John Lon, who played JV the first year. So that was a very special team. And I think probably as good as a team that went to state. Did you know that year you guys are going to be good? And what are your recollections of that team?
Don't forget, we had Brian Smith too.
Brian was a very underrated player.
He was very key too, because he helped us in a lot of games. You know, I did not know this until years later, but I went back and looked at the statistics from the district championship game that year. We played West Springfield for like the 50th time. And Jeff Bowling and Chris Warren scored every point for us in the second half. Nobody else scored. Nobody else shot. You know, I think everybody kind of knew their role, quite honestly. But, you know, I was hopeful that we would be good. You know, you just never really know how the young ones are how far they're going to come and whether or not, I felt very confident about Jeff, and I felt somewhat confident about Chris. But you're right. People were afraid of him. You know, he'd get in the post and guys would just back away from him. Like, it was really kind of funny to watch. But, you know, we played Woodson that year a couple times. They had huge front line.
They had George Bergen, and they had the other 6'6" guy too. I can't think of his name.
When did Andy Heck play for them?
Andy was also there too. He was a senior that year as well. Yep.
He's just a huge guy, but he did not like playing Chris Warren. And we beat them. Well, Brian came off the bench against Woodson at home. We were getting our butts kicked in the first half, and he came in and he started hitting baseline jump shots, and we came back and won that game because Brian had like 24 points or something like that. And we beat them in the semifinals of the district tournament when Chris hit a shot at the buzzer from the wing.
Off the glass.
Yeah. It was just like Sean. Sean's coming down now. He's got Chris on one side and he's got a shooter on the other one. I forget who it was, but we had 4 guards in the game. And I did not expect him to go to Chris, but he went to Chris and went, oh man. And Chris took one dribble and banked that thing in. And of course we all went crazy. It's just such a fun way to win a game. But he made a lot of big plays for us. And I thought we had a shot at going to the regional championship, but we screwed it against South Lakes at home.
Yeah. Brian Allen.
A big blame for that. Another great coaching decision. Let's hold the ball. We're up, whatever we were. Let's spread the floor. You know, and damn, they were a good defensive team, and we allowed them to come back and beat us. And we still almost won that game. We had it out of bounds, out under, I think with 2 seconds left or 1 second left. And we threw it up to Chris, and he actually got it and put it up there, but it didn't go in. And so we ended up losing by 1, you know, and that was just heartbreaking.
Brian Allen, who played for South Lakes, and he ended up playing for Parkhill at Penn State, great guard. He said that the Robinson team, they were like in awe. They said, how are we going to beat these guys? And they were surprised. They were surprised they were able to do it.
Yeah, they're probably surprised we started holding the ball too.
Yeah.
It's one of those decisions, you know, sometimes that would work out and sometimes it wouldn't. And
exactly.
You know,
well, real quick about Brian Smith, because me and Coach Boyer used to argue about Brian. Brian is one of these guys that get beat up in practice because we had like Joel Dempsey. We had so many big guys. So it was easy for Brian to get lost in the shuffle. But when we went to that team camp I was telling you about earlier, the football players couldn't come. So it was me, Jeff Bowling, Brian, Johnny Gould, and I think maybe like Mike Noble, or I don't know who it was, but it was Niels Muller. So we played awesome. And Brian was unbelievable. I mean, he was a hard post player to guard. So Brian ended up making the MVP of that week. So on the MVP team was J.R. Reed, Richard Morgan, Herbie Brooks. These are all Division I stars. And then a player from Cumberland, I forgot which player made it, and Brian Smith. Brian could have been a great player in the right situation, but it was very hard in Northern District. It was kind of a bruising place. If there had been 3-pointers when Brian played, he would have been a great high post player.
Yeah, he just had a funny, he had kind of long legs, and I remember his shot was it seemed like it was kind of flat,
Yeah.
but he could make it work, and I got a picture of you and Brian on a intramural basketball team with Andrew Benenti and some of his cohorts, and I'm sure plus he's a smart kid. I mean, good Lord,
Smart
he was
kid.
smart. He was an engineer, right?
Yeah. He's a professor. He's a professor at UVA now.
Is he really?
Yeah. He's down there.
Maybe I'll audit his class.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we had a team at UVA with Jay Hopkins, who played at Springfield, great shooter, Brian, Andrew Benini, and these two UVA Charlottesville legends, Dick Ward and Craig. I can't think of Craig's name, but all of them could shoot except for me. But we would go 1-4, and sometimes Benini would do it too. We're very hard to guard with all those shooters. But anyway, let's get to your '87 team. So your '86 team. Walter, may he rest in peace. I don't know if you knew Walter passed a few years ago.
I went to
heart attack.
the gathering at Burke Lake.
Okay, yeah, I just missed you that day. I must have, yeah. But that team, you had a good run that year, but I don't think you were quite ready. But your senior year, you had a very special team. Sean Johnson was a very special point guard. I mean, one of the best defenders I've ever played against. I mean,
Correct.
he had long arms, great lateral movement, almost impossible to bring the ball up against, and also a great scorer, great ball handler as well, competitive kid. You had Mike McDaniel, that was your backcourt. Kevin Dennis would come off the bench, and then you had John Lawn, Paul Bushman, and Tommy Martin. I mean, a very balanced team. Did you know going in that this had to be your year because they're going to all graduate that year?
Yeah, I mean, the year before we lost Paul Bushman the week before the region tournament. I don't know if you remember.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were playing TC at home, and he turned his ankle. All right, so he went into the locker room prior to halftime. It happened in the first half, and his dad was down there, and Larry Nottingham, who was the athletic trainer. And he didn't play in the second half. All right, so we come in the next day, and Paul was in a cast, and I said, "Why are you in a cast?" He said, "Well, they put the cast on me at the hospital. My dad took me to the hospital." So I thought it was a little bit extreme because it was a sprained ankle, but Mr. Bushman told me in no uncertain terms that this was something he was going to do because he wanted to make sure Paul's leg was fine. There was a hairline fracture, didn't want it to get any worse. We're going to put it in a cast, and he's not going to play the rest of the year. He'll be ready next year. So that was that. So we played without him. And as soon as Paul got the cast off, he started working in preparation for the next year. And, I've never seen anybody work harder than that. He was out there in the dead of the summertime doing drills, doing jumping rope, running sprints on the track. I mean, and he had an outstanding senior year. Was a region tournament player of the year. And I don't know. But I thought if any team was going to do it, this team had the potential to do it. Mm-hmm. And we were very balanced. There wasn't, it's kind of like somebody could get 25 on a given night, but we didn't really need that. Everybody could also get 12 or 15. People could, if you share the ball, distribute the ball. And they were a pretty good group. They were great. Well, I really liked them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of player was Sean Johnson, the coach?
Sean is everything you just described. I mean, as far as defense on the ball, there was none better. He harassed those poor guards from Woodson. Whew, they had a hard time with him.
Greg Kimball. Greg Kimball was the guard's name. Yeah.
So just go get him.
Yeah.
And I'll thank Will Robinson for that. When the year that Will was with us, And I went to great lengths to get Will up here. I drove down to Cumberland to talk to him, because we had come up through basketball camps together, and I watched him coach teams at summer camp, and I just liked the guy. He's just a very outgoing personality. He knew the game. He was so smart about guard play, and that was an area that I needed some support in. And so I thought it would be a great match, and I think he was really looking to get to the most I guess noticeable place that you could, because he had dreams for coaching. And so I asked him to come, and he came, but then things got screwed up as far as his job. They gave his wife a job. His wife Darlene got a job teaching at Robinson. Well, that's where Will was supposed to go, and Darlene was maybe going to go somewhere else, but they put Darlene, and then they put him as the security person out at Chantilly High School, working with Zion McKinney, which turned out to be great for Will, because Zion knew everybody, and it gave Will a job, and Will would just come over after school and coach with us. And he brought a lot of things to our program, most of all that in-your-face defensive play, which Sean and Mike and those guys actually were drawn to. They could see how effective that could be. And so we used it for 3 years, because we were, even though Will left to go work with Jim Lewis, which was a good move for him, we still benefited from his bringing that up to our group, so.
One of the most, and it's hard to talk about any players on that team because they all were good. But one of my favorite on that team was Tommy Martin. He's like, he's underrated guy, such a nice kid, but just a fierce competitor, fierce in his own way. I mean, hit big shots, get big rebounds. He doesn't make mistakes, never turn the ball over. What was Tommy like to coach?
Just what you described, he was very quiet. You really had to work to get him to speak. But he was always listening, and you would tell him something one time and he would do it, and the only time that he, and I remember this vividly because it's a statement in Tommy's that tells you what Tommy was like. When we were going to play Alonzo Mourning's team in the state finals, there was a coach from that area that came up and shared information with me about how to beat them, and one of the things that he shared was, when Alonzo gets the ball up at the high post, do not leave the other players and come and double team. They're going to keep the kid Tommy was responsible for guarding is going to stay in the low post. Don't leave him, because Alonzo is very good at passing the ball. Make him shoot it from out there. Do not double team him. So we used to play a lot of help defense, so early in the game, Alonzo gets the ball like around the elbow on the right side of the court. And Tommy's guarding the kid on the other side. He's on the baseline, and Tommy steps to help Bush. And Alonzo passes the ball, and the kid gets a layup. And immediately I said, "Tommy," and he looked right at me. He said, I know. And I knew he knew, it was a rule we had. You look to help out, that's what he'd been doing every day for his entire time on the varsity. And for one game, we want him to change it. And he just reacted like he always reacted, and it was not his fault. That's just the way that happened to be. And he didn't do it again the rest of the game. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. But that first time, it was very amazing. And it's just one of those plays that stands out in that game to me. So
what I liked about that team. So you guys beat, I believe, a very good Hayfield team with Deontay Traylor, I think Bruce Tolliver. Yeah, what's that?
Finally.
Yeah, finally you beat them because they got you junior year. You beat that team. It was a good matchup, great game. You'd beaten Washington Lee with Crawford Palmer in a great semifinal. Mike had fouled out, won the region. You go to state, you beat Heritage by 12 points easily from Roanoke. Then you go to the semifinals, and you just destroyed Denby. From the Eastern region was the strongest region in basketball. Denby had upset Indian River in the regionals there, so I think they were the top seed. You beat them by 28. I mean, Sean and Mike completely locked up their guards. It was a laugher. So you get to the state final, and it was kind of common knowledge at the time that Northern Region teams weren't good enough. We had to hold the ball at state. We had to spread the floor. It had worked for other teams, and because we couldn't compete down state anymore. And I was so proud of you guys because you went out there and played Indian River tough. You guys went toe to toe. We didn't hold the ball. Sean went right at him. I mean, we went to play, and we led most of the game. And I felt like there were some fouls called on Bushman they were basically touch fouls at a time when usually at the state tournament they let the boys play.
No comment. Personally, Julian, I love all referees. I've never had a bad one, and I commend them for the job that they do. Nobody wants to do it, but they do it with a smile on their face, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it is true. We did play them tough, and Bushman fouled out last 3 minutes, I believe, right? 4 minutes. And, it was ended up being a 9-point deficit or something like that. But it wasn't indicative of the game that we played. I mean, that was a game that we could have won that game. I really feel that way.
Could have. Do you remember how Bush fouled out?
I don't.
I tell this story all the time. It was like a little over a minute left, I think. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. But they had the ball out under their basket.
Mm-hmm.
And Alonzo's taking the ball out of bounds. And they did line up in a line, and so they throw the ball way back to the last guy, the point guard. And he catches the ball. And he then winds up and throws it like it's going out of the gym. And Alonzo made a beeline for the basket, catches the ball, and dunks it. All right. Bush is right with him, except he's about 3 feet lower. And he's like this, trying to stop the shot. And he gets hit in the face. He's got a bloody nose. There's blood coming down. And he starts walking over to the bench. And he said, "Coach, I fouled out." I said, "Bush, I know." And so I called the trainer. And it was all we could do, honestly, under the circumstances, because we all saw it happen. And there's just nothing you can do, I mean, it's done. And we're losing our best player, and they're going up 5 or 6 with under a minute to go. So we're hurting. But it was a valiant effort, but he just, he tried to stop a shot that was impossible to stop. And he paid the price.
I thought one of the keys to that game was they had a point guard. I can't remember his name. He was really short, and he was the only point guard I saw all year that could bring the ball up against Sean and not turn the ball over. He did not turn the ball over at all. And our pressure defense had created so much for us that whole postseason run. And this kid didn't do anything flashy. He didn't create anything, but he was able to get the ball across court and get the offense started. And that was not easy to do against the Robinson team. I mean, because Mike was also a tremendous defender too. I don't know. I can't remember that kid's name, but that was it. Well, anyway, let's go to the Chantilly days, because you ended up with Coach
Let me
Smith.
tell you one more thing.
Yeah.
That Denby game you're talking about? People wonder how we were able to beat them so decisively. That morning, I went out, and I would go out and run in the morning, and I came back to the hotel, and they had a pool and a hot tub. And I went down and sat in the hot tub, and in the hot tub with me were 3 of their players. All right. Now, this is like 11 o'clock in the morning. All right. Now, you've ever been in a hot tub. If you're in there for any length of time, it's going to sap your energy and it's going to take your legs away. They were in there almost the whole afternoon. I mean, I left. I came back down. They were still in there. They're just hanging out, having a good time. They had no legs, Julian. We employed the hot tub defense against them, and it worked miracles. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I almost wanted to say to them, guys, you have a game tonight. You might want to get out, but I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's funny. One of the kids in the hot tub was named Joel Bolden, and Joel ended up going to Mason. And he told the story. He said, "Yeah, we were in the hot tub all morning." So
true.
Oh God.
And honestly, they could not move. They could not. We went to the 1-3-1 zone against them to make them shoot from way out. They couldn't even get the ball in the basket. I mean, it was hilarious. People were wondering what happened to them, but just
it was.
It's the way it goes.
I mean, it was an embarrassment. I mean, they were all crying on the floor after the game. I mean, you guys, it was one of the biggest blowouts I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think they shot like 20% from the floor. You had like 20-something turnovers. It was rough.
We kept waiting for them to catch fire, but they just couldn't. They just couldn't. They were too wet from the hot tub.
So, well, anyway, so you get away from coaching for a while, but then later on, you joined Jim Smith's staff over at Chantilly, and you coached with Jim. And one thing that Coach Smith said to me, I'd never known Coach Smith. He didn't talk to officials a lot. He's very kind of standoffish in terms of officials. So I never knew him, but we had a great chat. But one thing he told me you helped him with immensely was post play, which you're a great coach of post players. I was wondering what did you learn from Coach Smith? So you're a big head coach, you had all the success, regional top title, went to state. Now you're an assistant, and you're learning. You're working for Jim Smith. What did you learn as a coach from working for Jim Smith?
Well, I learned to be an assistant. Again, it's hard for some people. But at the same time, my son Matt was on that team, and it's probably a good idea to have another voice there. To hear from him exactly what he's supposed to do. So that was a good thing. And Jim was very organized. He knew he knew guard play very well. He had some things he liked doing, offensively and defensively. And we would incorporate them every year. It was an easy transition for me as far as how we were going to play. We did some trapping. If we had the defensive players to be able to extend it, we would do that from time to time. But we concentrated on half court man-to-man defense, which we both strongly believed in. So our philosophies were very much similar to each other. And so it was pretty easy working relationship, actually.
But when you've been a head coach for a long time, did you ever get to a point where when you really disagree with something, you're like, was it hard to hold your tongue, or at least wait until later on to talk about it?
Well, as an assistant coach, you make suggestions. Right. As a head coach, you make decisions. So what my job was to make suggestions of what we needed to do, and to let him make the decision of whether we did it or not. One thing I tried to convince him of was to send Matt down to me and work him in the post more, because we're going to need him in the post before it's over. And he resisted that. He wanted Matt on the perimeter. That's where he wanted to be. So, that did not materialize, so not that it hurt us. It just, it's just an example of something that I thought we should do that he did not respond to. But other than that, that's pretty much the only thing that, if I made a suggestion, we would normally do it,
And what kind of a sports parent were you with Matt? Were you pressure Matt a lot about basketball, or just because he'd always been around it, it was inevitable that he was going to be a decent player?
He loved the game. I'll tell you, even as a little kid, he would write books about games. He would actually go from first quarter, second quarter. He'd write plays. He'd show defense. He'd name names. He was thinking about it all the time, and always went to camp, played. So it was pretty inevitable that he was gonna want to play basketball, and so I think I was probably hard on him, you know. Looking back on it, I mean, there was a point in time, Matt's senior year, when Jim had to call us both into the locker room and tell me to shut up, is basically what he said. And so I argued a little bit, and then I went home and talked to my wife, Annette, about it. And Annette kind of said the same thing. And I said, all right, one person tells you something, maybe you can write it off. Second person says the same thing, well, maybe you ought to at least consider it. And if three people tell you, you better damn well change it. And so I just shut up, I just sat and I would talk to Jim, but I wouldn't, I would coach the kids. And I focused on the post players, which Matt was not part of. And it seemed to work out okay. It worked out fine because that team really wasn't coming together very well. And then towards the end, the second half of the district schedule and the district tournament, we came together and actually won the district that year as well. Matt's teams won it all 3 years that he was playing varsity basketball. So
they had so much talent. There was so much talent on that team. I mean,
there was.
Yeah.
There was some good talent, and Herndon was good that year. They had Timmy Gardner, and one of the most fun I ever had coaching a team. I coached a sophomore AAU team in Nova United one year.
Yeah.
When Randy White was coaching the varsity guys, I was coaching the younger guys, and Matt, the two kids from Hunter Smith and Tim Gardner, the kid from WNL, Jason. I mean, we had a really good team from top to bottom, and so we won a lot of games that summer, and went to the YBOA tournament and had a chance to win that one. We went to the national AAU tournament in Greensboro and did well in that. I mean, we just had a really good time, and that's nice to have a lot of talent.
It is.
Put them in and say, go rebound.
Exactly.
So.
So it's interesting, Coach, because Matt's game was so different than your game. Your game was very measured, always under control. I remember your trademark move is you go up for a jump shot and then pass it. You're great at that. Matt he got the ball. He was creative. It was always at pace. It always struck me that Matt was a very different player than you.
Okay, let's back up in a minute. I was good at going up for a jump shot and I never passed, Julian. What are you talking about?
Well, by the time you play, maybe you were trying to show us something. You had this great way.
Some of the best games we played, when we started playing in the gym at Robinson, we had Greg Dennis came back from college. He was good. We had myself, we had Will Robinson playing the point. I mean, that's three pretty decent players right there. And then we had Boyer and Peterson who rebounded and played defense, and they didn't have to shoot.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't tell Boyer he's a good player. I'll never hear the end of it.
So, it was a lot of fun. We would play, we'd have a good time. But
no, you're a really good player. Maybe you're playing more of a team game because you were, trying to show us the right way to play. But with us, you were a tremendous passer, around us.
I enjoyed passing the ball, and Matt really enjoyed passing the ball too. I think there were times that I felt he should be more assertive as he got better and better, that he always wanted to blend, and sometimes, you got to have your players play, and stop the blending stuff. Let's make something happen. And, he would have a hard time with that from time to time because he was just always wanting to blend with the other kids on his team. He's a very good teammate, great leader actually in that regard. So it's not also fault, it just is,
Also became a good coach as well. So didn't you end up coaching your daughter as well in basketball?
Did I? Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I actually coached her freshman team, which was very much an experience. Before I got into coaching girls, I looked at Chantilly, which is the community we lived in, so I was familiar with a lot of the people. And, the girls just didn't have the same opportunities that the boys did. There was no camp. There was no AAU for them to play. Nobody was doing anything, and so I thought somebody's got to come in here and at least get them started, and establish some things that a good program would need to have in order to get players, get better. And so that's pretty much what I did. I applied for the head coaching job and got the job. And we immediately established an AAU program, which we played. We had a camp for 2 weeks in the summertime, which had a lot of girls come. And I was very pleased. We had probably between 65 and 85 girls show up.
This is like late 90s. This is like late 90s, right?
Yeah. In the 90s. And it's before Matt got into high school. His sister was would have been a junior, I think. So I did. I coached them, and we were competitive. We couldn't get over the hump. I think my daughter. I say this all the time. My daughter Kylie she was a good player, and she would go to the free throw line like 12 to 14 times a game, Julian, because she shot the ball from here. And she was in the post, and she was tough, and she would get the ball and she'd shoot it, and the referee would call a foul. But she shot 30% from the foul line.
Oh God!
If you could make 80% of your foul shots, you would be an all-region player. She didn't want to hear it. Kylie played the game for the social reasons. She was part of a team. She liked the people that she played with. She enjoyed playing. All of the, stuff about region tournament or, win, do this, do that. That wasn't the most important thing, Yeah. And so it was, I had fun with it. I had actually called Debbie Ryan at UVA when I got the job, because I wanted to ask somebody who coached women, how am I supposed to coach them? So I figured she'd be a good person to talk to. She looked at me and she said, Bob, just coach them the way you coach boys. And I'm here to tell you, Julian, that may not be the best advice I ever got.
Not the way you coached us.
So, all I can say is they were shocked sometimes at things I would say and do or make them do, if they've had a mental lapse or something once or twice down the floor doing the same thing wrong, and it's stop, put them on a line, make them run, come back, say, okay, let's do it again. I mean, just trying to get them to break bad habits and establish good habits was difficult, because a lot of them didn't play all the time. There wasn't a lot of basketball skill, but they were competitors and they wanted to be successful. So they would work at it, and that's all I could ask for them. We played some good teams pretty well. Katie Smirka-Duffy used to kick our tail every time. So that's just the way that went. We weren't ready for people like her. And I knew I was in trouble when I was sitting on the bench. This is when they were freshmen. And we're playing Falls Church. Falls Church is not very good. So we're way ahead, and I have the second or third group in, and my daughter and her friend Stacy are sitting on the bench. Kylie and Stacy are sitting on the bench, and I'm listening to them in a conversation, and I hear my daughter say, "Oh, their outfits are so tacky." And they're talking about the players on the floor. And I looked at her. I said, "Those aren't outfits. They're uniforms." And
Yeah.
He couldn't.
Yeah.
I tell that story all the time because, it's just different thought process, it's
Yeah.
a different thought process.
It kind of bottom lines the different ways women see basketballs
Yeah.
at some point. Yeah. So okay, coach. So you ended up getting the head job at the new school, Westfield, right? I think it was new. Was that cool to get back in as the head coach of a big program?
Yeah, little unexpected. I thought Jim was going to take the job, quite honestly. I kind of expected that. We had talked about it. He wasn't sure. He didn't know if he wanted to lead the Chantilly community or not. And so I said, okay, well, Francis Dahl had called me and asked me to apply to be the PE department chair. And so I did. Francis and I were old friends. I knew I would enjoy working with him and for him. I think Dale was named the principal at that point in time, and I knew Dale because he was at Chantilly then, and I thought the world of him. He's just an excellent principal and an excellent principal to work for. And so I applied, and so I became the PE department chair. And then one day out of the blue, Dale calls me and said, Bob, I'm going to be honest with you, Jim Smith turned the job down. So I'm calling you to see if you want to be the head basketball coach. And I said, absolutely. And I was surprised that Jim had said no, not shocked really, because he really loved Chantilly, so it's not an easy decision to make. And that was a time when people weren't all that excited about going to Westfield. If they were Chantilly people, they were Chantilly people. If they were Centerville people, they were Centerville people. Westfield can, do what it's going to do, but don't bother me. So there weren't a lot of kids that wanted to go to that school as a junior. That was a far different experience out at South County. South County people were dying to get out of Hayfield. And so the number of juniors that matriculated that year to South County was a lot greater than the number we had at Westfield. So, and it just turns out that year, for that year, I was the PE department chair. I was the head boys basketball coach. I started a master's program in administration. And Matt was going to college to play at Hampton-Sydney. And we were going to try to get to his games too in the wintertime. Now, that's a full schedule, and I look back on that period of time and I can't believe the things got done that got done. You just do what you have to do. And, I was PE department chair. I worked in the activities office, took classes, and traveled to go down to Matt's games. We went mostly on the weekends, but we made a couple of Wednesday games. They had, at that time, we could get to Hampton-Sydney in 3 hours from Northern Virginia. By the time he graduated, it was impossible.
Exactly.
Traffic was too bad. We couldn't even get out of Northern Virginia. So we didn't go during the week. We would listen to the radio on the weekdays, and then we'd travel on the weekends. So I don't know. It was a great time, just a busy time. Now I'm fully retired, and I get up, and I'm maybe by 11 o'clock I'm ready to do something. It's just a different life, different life.
Coach, you had a lot going on in Westfield, so you couldn't really focus on coaching. Like, did you still enjoy it as much as your Robinson?
Very much.
days?
Very much. I had great people around me. With Doug and Travis came in the next year. Tracy Scruggs came and worked with us.
Yeah.
I had admired Tracy for a long time after he played at Mount Vernon and then went into coaching too. We just had a group of people that were easy to work with and would do anything to help us be successful. And so it worked out pretty well, and we had good kids. We actually got a couple of kids back from private school that that one had been at DeMatha and one had been at Gonzaga, and both of them contributed. I thought we had a pretty decent team, the first year, and the second year I thought we were really going to make some waves, and we just sort of never really could get it together. And finally, we entered the last week of the regular season with an opportunity to come in third place if we won both games. We lost both games. And so we ended up in fifth. So we were not going to host a home game during the tournament. We had to play Herndon. Then if we won, we'd play Chantilly. And if we won, we'd have to probably end up playing Oakton or somebody like that. We weren't sure. And we hadn't beaten Herndon or Chantilly in 2 years. And so we went to practice that Saturday morning prior to the Monday start of the tournament. And we were going through our drills and they were just going through the motions. So I stopped them. I called them into a room and I said, look, we're not practicing anymore. And I said, why'd you come here? We just sat and talked. I said, why'd you come here? And every one of them said, we wanted to establish a program at a new school. And I said, well, you still have the opportunity to do that. Fortunately, basketball is a tournament game. And people will forget all about these regular season games if you find a way to put it together for the tournament. So, but it's not going to happen with what you're doing out there right now. So it's only going to happen if you make it happen. I said, let's just get out of here. I said, I'll see you Monday. I said more than that, but it was pretty much that in a nutshell. And damn, Julian, if they didn't come in and we went to Herndon and beat Herndon on a last second shot by Ben Woodson, hit a three and we won, played Chantilly in the semis and beat them. And then we played Oakton and beat them by like 20 in the finals. And then won 2 games in the region tournament and went to the Final Four. And I'm looking at it going, well, what happened? What's different? I mean, they came to play, and we just, until then, it just never, the pieces would never fit. And somehow they just decided that was going to change, and oftentimes it comes from players, doesn't come from coaches. Coaches can talk till they're blue in the face, but if the player doesn't buy into it or they don't make it happen, it ain't going to happen. So it turned out to be a lot of fun.
So Coach Jules had tremendous success. Did that surprise you at all, or did you know he could go in there and just?
I really didn't want to leave that team that I left. They were juniors. They were going to be seniors the next year. Errol Robinson, Matt Hale, Blake Murnane, Micah Blighty, Josh Richardson. I mean, guys, just great kids and good basketball players, competitive. I knew they were going to be good, but I really wanted to move into administration. I've been applying for activities directors jobs. Retirement was looming, and I wanted to be able to increase my retirement, which is in administration is really kind of the only way you can do that in education, because none of your coaching stipends or anything like that apply to your retirement. So Dale offered me the job as the activities director at South County, and so I had to tell the kids that I was going to be leaving. But the good news was I had gone in to see Francis and said, Doug's ready, just give him the job, and he had already made that decision. And so I had no doubt that he would be successful. He's got a great way with kids. He's an excellent communicator. My God, he knows everybody in a 3-state area, I think, and so it's not surprising. And yeah, they've had a few down years, but they'll come back. Just things seem to run in cycles, and there's no doubt in my mind that they'll be back on top at some point, sooner rather than later.
So Coach, I know you were activities director at South County. I think you were the same at TC Williams. When you look back on your career, do you ever wish I know for retirement pay reasons, you had to do what you have to do, But do you ever look back on your career and wish you would have coached more, or what was were your stints as an activities director also interesting? And are you very happy you spent time doing those tasks
Well,
as well?
I'm very happy that I became an activities director. Coaching was something that I loved doing.
Mhm.
It's not anything that you get really rich at or anything like that, but the relationships that you develop and the competitiveness of this area, I mean, people like to win, they want to win. And so you're always trying to find a way to get an advantage over somebody one way or another. And so it's fun. And there's always a place to play, there's a league here or a league there, so you just don't, you don't have to search too far, and that part I really enjoyed. And it can get a little tiring sometimes, I mean, it got to the point with me that the off season was almost more important than the season. It's how much development do the kids do from, the end of the basketball season until the start of the next one. And you got to put them in leagues. You got to monitor their games. You got to make sure that they're, because kids are kids. They don't play as hard as head coaches and in the stands, and so that got, you spend that much time, and I think that's the only way you can do it. I mean, if you're going to commit to coaching, you got to commit to all of it, and there's a lot that goes into it, and some people don't see it, other people do, and you got to deal with the parents. You got to deal with people, and sometimes it's not always easy. You just have to have a philosophy, and you stick with it, and you keep preaching it, and eventually it either catches on or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, there's not much you can do about that. But you just have the kid's best interest in mind, and be honest and fair in your evaluations, and just do what you can.
Yeah.
So it's fun, but administration is different in that you deal with a lot of problems, and you deal with problems not of your own making, and that has its that can be a little tiresome too.
Yeah.
And you deal more with adults than you do kids. Kids, you expect them to make mistakes and do stupid stuff, and then you can guide them and teach them and make sure that they don't do it again. Adults, I don't know how many times I've said, just do your damn job. Just do your job. It's not that hard.
Right.
So it's just a whole different ball game, but I enjoyed it. I tell you, I wish I'd have stayed, because when I left to go to TC, I left because of money.
Yeah.
I was eligible to retire in Fairfax, and I could draw my Fairfax retirement and go to work at TC, and they would pay me pretty well. So we increased our income significantly. But I would not recommend that move for anybody today. It's a hard place to work. Too many factions working against each other, so you can't get a decision made. And so it was just an experience that I wish, if I look back on it, in my one regret, never did anything in this business for the money. And that one decision that I made because of money turned out to be a bad one. So my recommendation to a young coach is just stay the course. Don't worry about the money. Do what you love, do what you like, do what you enjoy, and don't worry about the money. Money will come. So
yeah. Well, last question, Coach. Do you think nowadays basketball is changed a lot since you were coaching me at Robinson? The parents are much more intense. The public schools take the best players generally, and you have to really recruit your players to actually stay. You have to recruit the players in your district to stay at the high school. You have social media; everyone's tweeting stuff about their games. And the game has changed a lot. Do you think you would still coach if you're coming along and today?
Probably, yeah. If I had more energy, and if
Yeah.
if I was brought up in that that I don't understand all this social stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I look at Instagram, and I don't want people to know what I'm doing all the time. I mean, my life is my life. My family's life is my family's life. Um, it's not out there for everybody.
Yeah.
So I just don't always get it, but I'm trying to learn. It just as far as coaching is concerned, I watched my son Matt go through. I mean, he was the head coach of Glen Allen up until a couple of years ago. He got out of coaching because well, he had a job offer that he couldn't turn down. From a friend of his that he had been they'd been talking about it for a number of years, and he finally convinced Matt that it was time, and he's glad that he did, because it was just getting to be more and more difficult. You had to answer questions all the time about your philosophy and why this and why that and why not this and why not that, and my son, and it just you try to develop a team, family atmosphere, and it's hard to do when you got people, just looking at individuals. So I think it did get harder. And he still liked it, he still enjoyed the games, he liked the competition. When he was on the floor with his team and they were working on things and doing stuff, that's the kind of stuff that you really love. It's the outside stuff that gets to you, kind of wears you down, and so I don't know what I would do at this point. I couldn't tell you. I would probably try to do a little bit better in school and maybe have a better job offer than $6,500 a year.
Yeah,
See, back
exactly.
then I had a lot of fun coaching.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
And so I would not change that for the world. In fact, I had an opportunity. Brian Tully played at Virginia. He coached up here for a while. He coached at Fort Hunt, and then he got into private business. And he was working in about in 1984-85. Brian called me and asked me to come in to interview. He said, "I'm going to move up in this organization, and I'd like for you to take my job." And his job was setting up a food service. He was in the food industry, and he would put together a big expo out in Chicago every year for new things going on in food industry and grocery stores and all that kind of stuff. So he spent most of his year on the phone organizing this thing. And it really sounded good to me. And he offered me a job with a lot more money than I was making when I was at Robinson at the time. This was like 84, 85. This was right before Jeff Bowling and Chris Warren were seniors and Brian Smith. And I turned him down. My wife and I talked about it, and I would have to commute into Washington every day. I would have to work in Washington. I would be on the phone most of the time. I'd spend a couple weeks out in Chicago organizing and making sure this thing ran well, but there was opportunity for advancement too. And I seriously considered it, but I just couldn't see myself sitting on the phone. I just couldn't do it. So I said no. And I'm glad I did, because we had a great couple of years right after that. It was a lot of fun. And but you look back on it and think, well, maybe I could have supplied more for my family. I don't know. But, you do what you do. And at that point, I was deep into coaching, and I just didn't want to change it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Coach, you did a lot for me. I'll never forget those days at Robinson. We had so much fun, so many laughs. We won some games as well. And then, be a part of the teams after, because I coached several leagues for you and stuff. I always had such a great time. So I want to thank you for all the guidance and all the mentorship you gave me. You also put me in touch with Andrew and all your friends at UVA. So I had a good basketball support system down there. So we had such a great time. I owe you a lot of laughs.
You don't owe me anything. I owe you, Julian. I appreciate you having me on here. When I first met you, you weren't that big. I was talking to somebody and I said,
Roscoe Dean.
Yeah. I said, he's our point guard.
Yeah.
I said, he can't play for me. She said, you're not going to be able to cut him. I said, watch me. And what do I know? That's just blustering, talking. And he was exactly right. I don't know if you remember this. We were sitting on the bench at Fairfax High School and we're playing a game and they're out there and they're in a triangle in two. All right. And all of a sudden I hear this, hey coach. And I look down and he said, that's a triangle in two. I said, thanks, Julian. I didn't know that. She's always helpful. Always helpful.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You told that story at I won the leadership award my senior year. You told that story about cutting me. And I was talking to Coach Smith about that. You could have kept Chuck Heaton. And his dad was a summer league coach. And he played a lot the year before. You cut him and kept me. Yeah. That was a really bold move your first year at Robinson.
It was a hard move. I liked him and I liked his dad. His dad had a TV program too, a radio program about Northern Region sports. I thought, oh man, but he was very, very, he understood. And again, that's just a rule. I had a rule kind of philosophy that if you don't start as a senior, you better bring something special to the table, because otherwise you're just going to become a problem. And he just was one of those players that was like all the other ones we had. You weren't. You were special.
Yeah, I remember one time, Coach.
I'm surprised you're not president yet.
Yeah, I know. Oh well, I'm on my way. I remember one time you told me, you were talking to me one time. You said, Julian, I'm going to have to play Johnny Gould some. This is my senior year, John. I have to get him ready for next year. And I said, Coach, with all due respect, you're not going to need guards next year. You got plenty of young guards you got to worry about. And you looked at me, and you're like, I think he's probably right. Yeah.
You know those kids. Poor Johnny just got caught in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Got caught.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good guy. He was a competitor, but I mean, we had so many guys coming. It was a special time. It was a special time to be at Robinson. I feel lucky to have been swept up in it. So, but anyway, Coach, let's do a better job keeping in touch, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me on, Julian.
Yeah, it's been great, Coach.
And we'll talk to you again.
Okay, Coach.
And we'll do.
Yeah, say hi to Andrew. Yeah, we'll do one. Say hi to Andrew also. Okay.
Will
All right,
do.
Coach. Thanks again, buddy. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.